Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 698 for the 20th of February, 2022. Richard Saunders coming to you today from Sydney, Australia, where it's still somewhat muggy and hot, although the temperatures are fluctuating a bit. Maybe I should become a weather reporter. Coming up on this week's show, it's the return of the Book of Tim with Tim Mendham. Tim Mendham being the Executive Officer of Australian Skeptics and, of course, the editor of that fine journal, The Skeptic. Tim will be reading from the pages of The Skeptic once again, and this time he dives into the meaning, the origin of the word bunk. Bunk! Why do we say something is bunk or bunkum? Find out with Tim Mendham. Also this week on the Trove segment, we look at some of the historical references to the term mind, body, spirit, or Festival of Mind, Body, Spirit, or Mind, Body, Spirit expos and things like that. New Age fairs with psychics and all sorts of people who claim to be able to heal you via mystical methods. But to start off the show this week, our first report is something a little unusual. I'm on the spot, I'm in the street, I'm on the scene as nurses and midwives here in Sydney, and I think throughout the state of New South Wales, took industrial action and protested in the streets. Now, the reason I got out of bed to cover this protest was that they were protesting against, well, what's happened to them really since the pandemic hit and the tough conditions they've found themselves in, having to deal with COVID patients, and also things like having to be on the scene when people are in the last stages of life and their friends and family can't be there because of COVID restrictions, having their colleagues fall sick with COVID and then being stretched to the limits because of low staffing and all sorts of things. So I thought that was worth covering, but it was also a chance for me to see the difference between people who are firmly based in science and reason, the nurses and the midwives, protesting, as opposed to the people who are firmly not based on science and reason, the anti-vaxxer conspiracy theory protests, the freedom fighters. And I found the differences to be stark. I did come across a freedom anti-vaxxer protest a few months ago in Sydney, and it was a rabble of people with ridiculous legal signs, all sorts of banners, and no masks. And this is a huge point I make in the upcoming story. In fact, at the anti-vaxxer protest, when I walked by wearing a mask, I was yelled at because I was wearing a mask. Another thing to note during this story coming up is that it was loud. It was very loud. There were speeches made on public address systems. So I'm a little bit drowned out at times, but bear with it. You should be able to hear what I'm saying, although sometimes it's a little difficult. And thank you to the various nurses who took time to chat to me on the day. So here we are, coming up towards the end of February, and another shout out to my teacher friends out there who are still being very cautious and careful, especially in the playground and around, as lots of students, thousands of students have gone back to school. So just to let you know, teachers, I'm thinking about you. I think you do a wonderful job, just like I think the nurses do a wonderful job too. Now that's enough from me right now. I'm going to run downstairs and have something, I don't know if you've tried this, nice crusty toast. A little bit of, cream cheese or butter or margarine. A nice dollop of peanut butter, and then a little bit of maple syrup. What a nice combination. Well, I try that. I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
Nurses and midwives throughout New South Wales took very rare industrial action. They marched in the streets, they held up placards, they had rallies to protest against what they perceive as poor working conditions and being completely and utterly overstretched during the COVID-19 pandemic of the last 2 years. Now, we've certainly seen many protests in the last couple of years to do with COVID, but they have all been really from the conspiracy theory crowd, the freedom fighters, and so on, with their mass protests. I thought I'd go down to Macquarie Street here in Sydney, where our state parliament is, to where the protest was happening with the nurses, to find out what was going on. And as you'll hear, one of the things that certainly struck me was the fact that the nurses and the midwives and all the people there were wearing masks. It was a sea of blue scrubs and blue masks, unlike the anti-vaccination protests. We take you now to Macquarie Street in Sydney on the 15th of February.
It's Tuesday the 15th of February. I'm here in Martin Place, Sydney, walking up to the giant protest from the nurses and midwives who are protesting here at Parliament House because they've been put under increasing pressure owing to COVID. Unreasonable work hours, terrible pressures, as you can imagine, with thousands of people being ill, and quite frankly they've had enough. So as I walk closer and closer, there are hundreds of nurses here in scrubs and what have you. Lots of media, police are here, and the talks are underway.
But we need to save our health system. It's time you or your minister came to the table with real
Walk around the side here.
real money.
Lots of signs being held up.
Stop saying no.
Our patients are wearing thin. That's a great sign. Some nurses holding up.
And we understand.
And they simply, they've had enough. And I can well sympathise. Another sign says, "Thank you doesn't pay my bills," which is very true. And it's good to see so many people here who are passionate. And I think they're protesting for the right reasons, because this is the flip side. You see the protesters who have been in the same location, the anti-vaxxers and the conspiracy theorists. Well, this is the side they don't want to know about. This is one of the results of their reckless behaviour and their conspiratorial thinking, that the healthcare workers who we rely on are really under pressure, so much so they've taken the extraordinary step of doing this public protest, which is certainly not normal.
And you're ready to stay fighting until we win.
It's a bit hard to talk to people at the moment because they're all engaged in listening to the speakers.
To say to the Premier of New South Wales, to say to all of his ministers.
I tell you one striking thing about this protest, and it so smacks you right in the face, so to speak. It smacks you right in the face that they're all wearing masks. I have a sea of nurses and health professionals here wearing masks in public, which is a real big two fingers up to the anti-vaxxers who march around unmasked.
working in their...
There's so many people here. I actually can't see the speaker. They're in front of Parliament, but I'm way back in the crowd. It's very hard to see where the speaker is because in front of me are just a sea of people with placards and flags.
Experience with more one-on-one care.
More sea of blue scrubs. Blue scrubs and masks. It's just amazing. And even a little kid dressed up in his green scrubs. Centre of attention. Fair pay nurses stay, the sign says here. Absolutely. Fair pay nurses stay. I like that very much. Can I chat to you for a moment for my podcast?
Oh, okay then.
I mean, you're just a sort of a random person I've come across here at the protest.
Okay.
Why are you here? What's the motivation? What's your passion?
Better conditions for the nurses in New South Wales. We need a pay rise. We need to not have to prove that we got COVID at work to have some COVID leave. And we need ratios.
Yeah.
We need it now.
And one of the things that walking around here I've noticed, apart from the sea of blue scrubs we're seeing everywhere, is that as opposed to the conspiracy theorists who like to march and everything, we're all wearing masks.
That's right. It's a COVID safe event, I suppose.
Yeah.
Nurses know more than everything that they need to wear their masks. So yeah.
I absolutely agree.
We're doing it safely.
Very safely. Here you are. That's
Thank
the
you so
podcast.
much.
Thank you for chatting to us.
Thank you. Have a lovely day.
You too. So you have. I noticed your sign, having a midwife crisis. Why are you here? What's the deal with the midwives being here?
We're really needing more staff on the floor. Women and babies, their lives are in danger because we don't have adequate nurses to care for them.
I was just saying before to somebody else, it's amazing to be here because everyone's wearing masks as opposed to the anti-vaxxer protests.
Yes.
It's very good. Well, thank you so much for your time. Have a listen to the show. It should be coming up soon. Thank you. It looks like the crowd could be on the move now. I'm not sure. It's hard to tell from back here. I'm losing my voice because it's so loud. Yes, lots of movement now. People are starting to disperse or move somewhere else en masse. Instead of heading my way, lots of people coming by. I might be able to chat with somebody else. Lots of signs. Support them, it says. Pay nurses more. Here to that. I absolutely agree. Come on, Parité, give nurses fair pay. Parité is the Premier of the state. And again, I'm seeing a sea of blue scrubs. Blue scrubs! With the odd green scrub here and there. But yes, now the crowd are starting to disperse. Moving down now. Where are they moving to, I wonder? Are they just going to break up the whole thing? I've managed to put myself up on a wall here near the front of the Sydney Hospital, and a sea of blue scrubs marching by, all wearing masks. I can't emphasize that point enough. It's so good to see they're COVID safe. They're really taking this seriously. I think I'll march with them, so to speak. It's a little hard. I'm trying to be a dispassionate reporter, but I can understand their point of view, and I appreciate the fact that they know what's going on. They're on the front line. They're having to deal with this pandemic like nobody else.
Okay.
I love your sign. Skeleton staff equals skeleton patients.
We've seen enough patients suffer from low staffing levels, and it's about time it stops.
What do you think? Why aren't the government doing what we would consider to be the right thing in helping nurses?
I feel like they just need to spend one shift shadowing a nurse and seeing what we do in a shift, and maybe they would get some understanding, but at the moment they've got no context at all.
I think you're right. And one of the things I've mentioned to other people here the striking thing about this protest and other protests I've seen from the conspiracy theorists and those who don't believe in COVID, we're all wearing masks.
Oh yeah.
I've got a sea of scrubs and a sea of masks. It's so good.
The science is what works, it's the proof, it's what we practice by, and that doesn't change the fact that we still need to provide that science in safe ways.
Well said. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You got my card? Excellent.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you.
So there you go. I followed the protesters after they dispersed, and they marched through Hyde Park, and there was a river snaking through the footpath in Hyde Park of blue scrubs and still blue masks. A COVID-safe protest, and I can't help thinking if all the other protests lately had been COVID-safe, there might be fewer people in hospital for these valiant nurses and midwives to look after.
We do.
I'm Mick West. In my podcast, Tales from the Rabbit Hole, I have extended conversations with people who have been involved in conspiracy culture. I do this for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because it's really interesting. These people have great stories about how they fell down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole, what they did down there, and what it was that helped them out. Sometimes I also talk to people who investigate conspiracy theories, and they have equally fascinating stories from the other side. Secondly, I want to understand how best to prevent the spread of conspiracy theories and misinformation, which is an increasing problem in a time when alternative media is exploding. The best way to do this is to communicate effectively with the people involved, and the best way to do that is with a nice long chat. So check it out, Tales from the Rabbit Hole, tftrh.com.
And now, a reading from the Book of Tim with Tim Mendham.
Hi, my name's Tim Mendham. I'm the editor of Australian Skeptics magazine, The Skeptic, and I'm Executive Officer for Australian Skeptics Inc. And I'll be reading today from The Skeptic magazine, volume 33, number 3, which is September 2013. And this is an article about bunk. In fact, it's bunk about bunk. This is an article by Martin Bridgestock that looks at the history of bunk and finds that it's not all what it seems. But is it bunk? Most skeptics are familiar with the term bunk, or perhaps bunkum, with its associated skeptical activity of debunking. The Oxford English Dictionary tells us that it means humbug or nonsense. And of course, Henry Ford told us that history is bunk. But why bunk? The word has several perfectly legitimate uses. It can be a type of bed, like a bunk bed, or a plant from which drugs can be made, and also it refers to part of a sled. None of these meanings has any obvious connection to empty claptrap. So how did nonsense come to be termed bunk? The answer lies in politics and slavery and goes back nearly 200 years. Let us go back in imagination to the United States Congress of February 1820. The representatives were nearly exhausted. A highly contentious issue was being discussed and had been the subject of argument for about a month. This was the status of the proposed state of Missouri, the first new state which would be west of the great Mississippi River. The question was, should Missouri be allowed to have slaves, or must it be free? A great deal hung on the outcome of questions like this. The United States began as a string of colonies down the east coast of America. After independence, the Americans moved inland, setting up new states as they went. The southern states had become wedded to a slave economy, while many northerners regarded slavery with horror. As a result, the entry of each new state was watched closely by both sides. If too many slave or non-slave states entered the Union, then partisans might be able to force legislation through Congress. An uneasy balance ensued, with slave and free states being admitted in roughly equal numbers. The congressmen of 1820 were weary. They had been arguing and yelling for about a month on this Missouri question. Eventually they forged the Missouri Compromise, which allowed slavery in Missouri and some southwestern territories, but not in a huge swathe of northwestern land. The compromise, with additions, held for about 40 years before it collapsed and was unused. It was an ugly political measure, but it was the best that either side could obtain. Right at the end of this debate, Representative Felix Walker of Bunkum in North Carolina, that's Buncombe, he rose to speak. He did not complete his speech. According to legend, his words were so empty of meaning, so worthless, that other congressmen began to shout him down. He persisted, replying that he had to speak for bunkum. The critics grew louder, the cries grew louder, and eventually he was persuaded to sit down. The City of Washington Gazette, whether out of kindness or cruelty, printed his speech in full the next day. The legend grew that Felix Walker had made an utterly worthless speech, simply seeking to fool the people of Bunkum into thinking that he was working hard at representing them. So the custom developed that when someone was speaking simply for the sake of appearances, he was described, perhaps with a wink, as speaking for Bunkum. And then just Bunkum, B-U-N-K-U-M, and finally, bunk. So the name of a southern US town became the label for nonsense. The town of Bunkum has put the best face on this it can. Outside the town is a sign commemorating the way that Representative Walker gave a whole new meaning to the term bunkum. The exact meaning, naturally, is not explained. When I learned about the word's origins, I became curious about the original speech. What, I wondered, was so awful about Walker's words that he was howled down by his fellow congressmen? What would the quintessence of bunk look like? So I located Walker's original speech and read it. Rather to my astonishment, Walker's speech is not bunk. The original piece of bunkum does not conform to the definition at all. Indeed, if you want a summary of the arguments advanced by one side in the debate, Walker's speech does a good job of making the key points. I should make two important points before moving on. I suspect most skeptics would agree with my stance that slavery is a total evil, and that the northern anti-slavers like Abraham Lincoln and William Lloyd Garrison were completely in the right. Therefore, we might feel unsympathetic to Walker. Still, we should remember that millions of people supported slavery, and it was his job to represent them. And of course, a speech can support a bad cause without being vacuous. The two are not logically linked. Second, the speech is appallingly long-winded. It is just under 5,000 words long, and at a guess, its entire content could probably be stated in about a fifth of that length. Its stance and its wordiness can prejudice us against the fact that it makes about a dozen important points. What sort of things does Walker say? He freely concedes that slavery is an evil, arguing only that abolition is probably more evil yet. He makes the point that the current slave owners did not originate slavery, that the people they brought from Africa were not free originally. They might well, he thinks, be better off in the USA even as slaves. Preventing slavery from spreading across the Mississippi River will not free a single slave. He also points out that the family of American states is likely to be torn apart by conflict over this issue, the most terrible conflict imaginable. He regards Americans from the states in the north and the east as his brethren, and is appalled that they don't regard him in the same way. Skeptics can exercise their critical faculties by reading Walker's speech. It provides good practice in cutting through verbiage to see the key points beneath. In addition, it is useful practice to refute the different arguments. For example, is it perfectly true that contemporaneous, i.e. 19th century, American slave owners did not originate slavery? On the other hand, those who perpetuate an evil and benefit from it must acknowledge some responsibility for that evil. In addition, they must not be surprised if they are regarded badly by those who seek to eliminate the evil. The other points can be addressed in a similar way. On one point, though, Walker is completely correct. He points to the dangers of conflict within the Union and goes on to predict terrible consequences if anti-slavery legislation is forced through. The last paragraph of his speech goes like this, and it is wordy, as people have complained. Sir, in the last war we lost our thousands. But if you will force upon us this restriction, you may, in the end, in the course of your mistaken policy, which, if persisted in, go on with increasing rapidity, at last compel us to take leave of each other and lead to an event that may prostrate the lives of the 10,000s of your choice citizens and fatally terminate in the dissolution of our confederated government. Walker was exactly right, though he did not live to see his prediction confirmed. The Missouri Compromise and its successors held for 40 years. When compromises finally came apart, the American Civil War claimed not tens of thousands, but hundreds of thousands of lives and left large parts of the country in ruins. On this point, Walker was terribly, hideously right. Now, I hope that I have justified my argument that Walker's speech, although mediocre, is by no means empty claptrap. It certainly does not justify the appellation of bunk. Why, then, has it acquired such a bad reputation? I suspect the context explains this. The politicians had been struggling for a month to come up with a solution. Undoubtedly, there had been hours of bargaining and debate in offices, inns and corridors. These discussions would not be concerned with general principles, but with hard facts and questions about what each side might find acceptable. Therefore, when Walker spoke to exhausted congressmen, his general points fell upon deaf ears. This shows that content is an important factor in getting your viewpoint across. If your message isn't appropriate for a particular audience, it probably won't be heard. Sometimes you can tailor your message so that it will be heard, but sometimes, as with Felix Walker, it is impossible. Another important point is directly related to skepticism. Popular perception is not always right. Walker's speech was not empty claptrap, but he has gone down in history as exactly that. There is always value in examining the evidence for popular myths and beliefs and finding out how much truth is in them. And that's Bunk About Bunk from the Skeptic magazine, September 2013, volume 33, number 3. And you can read the full issue of that magazine, of that particular edition, on our website, along with many other editions of The Skeptic, for free. Just go to skeptics.com.au and click on magazines, and you will see a plethora of great reading. But you won't get the most recent 4 ones that way, and you certainly won't get future ones unless you subscribe. So there you are. I'm sure you'll do that straight away.
This is Heidi Robertson from the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters. We are a group of concerned citizens dedicated to promoting good science and common sense in our region, the far north coast of New South Wales. This area, famous for its natural beauty and relaxed lifestyle, also has the lowest rates of vaccination in Australia. We are out to change that by challenging the myths and misinformation and by providing good evidence-based information to the community. We'd love for you, no matter where you are in the world, to join our fight. Please visit our webpage at www.nrvs.info. We also have a link there to our Facebook page. Tweet us at NRVaxSupporters, that's VAX, and check us out on Wikipedia by searching for Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters. Thank you.
It's time once again to look into those archives at Trove, at trove.nla.gov.au, the online resource for Australian digitised newspapers and periodicals and gazettes and magazines and menus. It's just about everything you can imagine. Fully searchable, going back decades and decades and decades. And we've certainly discovered many, many interesting things over the months here in the Trove segment. But today I thought we would visit something that I haven't been to for a while owing to the pandemic, and that is
the Festival of Mind, Body, Spirit, or of course as the skeptics refer to it, Mind, Body, Wallet. Now, I've been visiting this festival, well, roughly every 6 months for almost 20 years, well, until recently, of course, and I have learned a great deal by visiting these psychic fairs and expos and so on. I've reported on many of them in the pages of the Skeptic magazine and here on the Skeptic Zone, and over the years it's been a great social opportunity to meet up with other skeptics, wander around and learn what's going on in the alternative world. And we've uncovered our fair share of scams and cons along the way. So let's dive into those archives and see what we can find in the history of Australian media. And our first entry comes from Monday, the 4th of September 1995. From the Canberra Times, Psychic Affair. Seers rub auras with skeptics. And this is a story by Chris Ullman. Somehow, the scene was eerily familiar. Albert Hall seethed with spiritual healers, clairvoyants, tarot card and palm readers, aura photographers, naturopaths, and a myriad of other world prophets and New Age healers at yesterday's 16th annual Spiritual and Psychic Fair. They were not alone. Canberra's credulous and curious were out in droves. Last year, the fair pulled 2,000 people despite a minor scheduling hiccup. No one had foreseen this event clashing with Grand Final Day. Alas, so thick was the lunchtime crush around the psychics' card tables that it was impossible to break in to ask for a quick reading on a list of test questions being circulated by Canberra skeptics. Among some quite predictable questions in the Skeptics' Prediction Challenge was the tantalising, quote, "Will Carmen Lawrence be forced to stand down?" End quote. Alas, we shall just have to wait and see. Near the front door, the aura photographers were doing a brisk trade at $25 a snap, including reading. Customers sat on a chair and placed their hands on a machine called an aura spectrometer, 6,000, while their pictures were taken. For their money, believers were given what looked like a badly exposed Polaroid, and then someone explained what the lurid swirls of colour about their heads meant. Unable to quiz the seers, there was nothing to do but browse the wares and services on sale at the stalls. A donation brought you a quick bit of spiritual healing. For a few dollars more, you could get what, to the untrained eye, looked like the same thing but lying down. There was an astounding variety of crystals, potions, meditative CDs, and dolphin posters. The prize for Stop You in Your Tracks impact went to the stall selling unicorn milk and mermaid essence. Unfortunately, the stall holder's answers to the obvious questions was mundane. "No, we do not have a unicorn tied up out the back," she said. Unicorn milk turns out to be a mixture of soothing oils. And no, mermaid essence is not what you get when you run a few of them through a blender. It's another concoction of oils with special properties. The storeholder, Laura Manning, is a full-time Sydney aromatherapist who sells products for a Queensland company, Dragon's Parlour. She said the names for the oils were designed to be interesting and to appeal to people's sense of fun. "Unicorn's milk sounds a lot more interesting than relaxation oil," she said. So it does. Alongside the aura photographers was a table manned by Harold W. Tietze of Bermagui. He was flogging a range of self-published titles, including The Miracle Fungus, which he said had sold 90,000 copies in the past 14 months. According to one of Mr. Tietze's flyers, the fungus in question, kombucha, can be brewed at home
and is apparently very good for you, although the flyer says much of what is written about the fungus includes nonsense information, half-truths, or even dangerous statements. So, in case you were wondering, there is no proof that you can get pregnant without seeing a male, just by drinking kombucha. But you never know. Now, that's very interesting. When was that? 1995. And in my 20 years or so of experience at going to Mind Body Wallet, nothing has changed. You still see the same sort of things, especially the Aura camera, which has been doing the rounds for years and years and years and years. And I would hope most people simply treat it as a bit of silly fun. But that's interesting. The skeptics at the time had a prediction challenge. I'd be curious to see what that challenge involved, what the questions were. And next we find an entry in the Riverina Herald from Echuca, Victoria, dated the 5th of April 1999, a few years later. Psychic Fair this weekend. Pegasus Psychic Fairs will be in Echuca from Friday, April 9 to Sunday, April 11 inclusive, at Paramount Arts Centre in Hare Street. Jeffrey, John, Roger and Mark Riley have travelled extensively with their fairs and now have put their own touch into Pegasus Fairs. 2 events have been held at Warrnambool and Majura, and Echuca promises to be just as successful. Pegasus Fairs, as far as possible, uses readers and storeholders from the local area, thereby providing a wide exposure for them in our own community. Organisers anticipate 2 or 3 people from Echuca area will be at the fair, with others coming from Adelaide, Melbourne and other Victorian country areas. A wide variety of readers will be present, including tarot readers, astrologers and palmists, as well as New Age books, CDs, crystals and other New Age products. Free workshops will also be held during each day. A photography exhibition featuring landscapes by The Eyes of Mark will also be on display. And this reminds me of the smaller Mind Body Wallet affairs, and I've certainly been to many of those. They seem to pop up in the past 20 years at least in local clubs, what we call the RSL clubs or the services clubs or the leagues clubs or something like that. Australian listeners will know what I mean. And now here's an entry from the Times of Victor Harbour in South Australia, dated the 11th of February 1999. Health and Harmony Fair. The South Coast Health and Harmony Fair is being held at Pioneer Hall at Middleton on February 20 and 21. This year's fair is shaping up as an all-encompassing festival of mind, body and spirit. It will feature free workshops, music, indoor and outdoor stalls, numerous healing mediums, and a large variety of practitioners. Readings, crystals, demonstrations, and a cafe will be available as well. A ticket for the day is only $3, and a ticket for both days is $5. Children under 12 are free. Everyone is invited to attend and share the healing energies. Oh, those healing energies. And now we come to the Riverina Herald, Echuca, Victoria, dated the 31st of May 1999. So many entries this week from 1999 in a section called The Melting Pot. Win with the Melting Pot, a festival to change your life. Discover the unique powers of tribal medicine, taste the juice of the noni plant, and have your tarot read, or discover the power of kinesiology. The 1999 Mind, Body, Spirit Festival is just around the corner, and this year's event promises to be the most varied, entertaining, and enlightening to date. I think it's a pretty low bar. More than 170 exhibitors will come together for 4 days at the Melbourne Exhibition Centre from June 11 to 14 for celebration and education. As we head towards the new millennium, Australians become more and more aware and intrigued by alternative medicines, the study and practice of ancient remedies, plus the power of the mind over body. In our search for knowledge and meaning, clairvoyance,
Reiki practitioners, aromatherapists, hypnotists, masseurs, educators and psychologists, among others, are responding to this quest for knowledge, and the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival allows the public to experience firsthand many of the products and practitioners they are interested in. Demonstrations, lectures, music, referral services and education information can be found, along with great tasting, healthy foods and beverages. And I'll just stop here to say, yes, over the years at Mind, Body, Wallet, I have certainly enjoyed lots of yummy food and bought my fair share of things like hot sauces and things like that. So it's not all woo. A highlight of the festival is the renowned lectures and workshops which sees the industry experts impart their knowledge on topics such as Qigong, Chinese art of healing, aura reading, psychological blockages, positive parenting, aromatherapy, spirituality, self-empowerment, relationships, feng shui, plus many more. Visit the 1999 Mind, Body, Spirit Festival. Rejuvenate your spirit, improve your health, and have a great time. Special door prizes valued at $2,000 are another reason to treat your body and soul. $1,000 worth of Bounty Essentials aromatherapy products, plus a chance to experience a Hepburn Spa Resort escape, also valued at $1,000, will be on offer, as well as course discounts, free books and tapes, free massages, and much, much more. You may discover a past you never knew or a future you never dreamt of. The show is on Friday, June 11th from 10 a.m. until 10 p.m. and Saturday, Sunday and Monday, Queen's birthday, from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. It costs $12 for adults, while children under 14 are free. For more information, contact the festival hotline on 1-900-931-798. The Riverina Herald Melting Pot has 5 double passes to the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival to give away. To be in the running to win, simply cut out the Melting Pot banner on the top of this page, remember to include the date, and send it to the Riverina Herald Melting Pot, P.O. Box 21, Echuca 3564, or drop it into the office at 270 Hare Street, Echuca. Remember to include your name, address, and telephone number. Entries close midday Friday, June 4. I wonder if anybody applied. I wonder. And finally, we dip right back to the year 1980 from the Australian Woman's Weekly on the 1st of October. And it's just one of the search results that came back when I ran my inquiry. Psychic with a drawing board. Coral Polge is a psychic. She says that by sitting down with you, saying a short prayer, and squeezing your hands tightly, she can contact someone who was close to you but who is now dead. What makes her different from most mediums is that she will then draw a picture of the person she has contacted. She is in so much demand in London that you have to wait 6 months for an appointment with her. In October, she is coming to Australia for 6 weeks at the invitation of the Victorian Spiritualists Union. I don't ask my subject any questions. Coral says, I don't want to know anything about them, but when I concentrate, if there is somebody there who wants to make contact, I begin to draw. I don't know who I'm drawing until I have finished the picture. If the person recognizes it, and if it is particularly accurate, then there is usually a very emotional moment for both of us. Coral emphasizes that she cannot communicate further than drawing. She dismisses criticism as unfair. If a spirit wants to make contact with you, then it seems perfectly natural to me. We are all spirits, she said, and we wear a disguise which is a body for part of our existence. When we die, that disguise, our body, goes, but our spirit does not. This spirit is invisible to most people, but there are some, and I am one, who can communicate with them. If I can put you in touch with somebody you have loved, and make you aware that they want to make contact with you, it can only give a feeling of love and comfort to you. And that is good enough reason for my work.
Coral's only public appearance will be at Kew Civic Centre, Cotham Road, Kew, Melbourne, on October 23 at 8 p.m, November 7 at 8 p.m, and November 19 at 8 p.m. Admission $6. I wonder whatever happened to her. Well, there you go, just a brief dip. Our toe, we dipped our toe and a bit of our foot into the waters of Trove, and we saw some of the references to the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival. And with that last one, sort of a Mind, Body, Spirit event. Yes, once the pandemic is over, I look forward, oddly enough, to going back to Mind, Body, Spirit festivals, because I never know what I might find. Just as in Trove, have a look and you'll never know what you might find. Thank you for listening to The Skeptic Zone this week. And if you're listening to The Skeptic Zone just when it comes out tomorrow night here in Australia, I'll be talking live on Zoom for the Gold Coast Skeptics. My talk about strange energy and strange devices. Follow the link in this week's show notes and you can register and check out that talk all about orgone energy and scalar energy. The power balance fiasco of about 10 years ago, and a more updated example of people using applied kinesiology tricks to sell products. Now, I'm looking forward to that tomorrow night here in Australia, which will be Monday night here in Australia, or it will be Sunday in North America. Or check your local time zones for time zones. Thank you to those people who continue to support the Skeptic Zone at skepticzone.tv via Patreon or PayPal. And you can also support the Skeptic Zone by visiting www.skepticzone.tv, scrolling to the bottom of the page and buying an e-print, an e-copy of one of my examples of photography, my origami photography. Scroll to the bottom of the page and have a look. And you'll also notice there a few free samples you can just simply download, print out, put on the wall, and, well, there you go. And they include Pegasus, the flying pig, the origami pig I invented at the request of James Randi way back in 2007. And incidentally, every now and then on the Skeptic Zone you may hear a promo in Japanese. And that is talking all about the fact that you can download those pictures, and that lovely voice you're hearing doing the Japanese is none other than our reporter, Michelle Biggersma. Hello, Michelle. Coming up on next week's show, more of the Book of Tim, and, well, we'll just have to see, and that will be show 699 on the 27th of February. So that means it's almost 700 episodes of the Skeptic Zone. I don't have anything special lined up. I'll see what the next week might bring. But yeah, the Skeptic Zone will soon be celebrating 700 episodes. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off once again from Sydney, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian skeptics or any other skeptical organisation. kookaburras think it's funny.
Yeah, they would.
You got to laugh.
You got to laugh. They're supposed to be in the morning, aren't they?
Yeah, they don't care. Whoa, I just saw a big shadow. I think one just flew down somewhere.
Well, we often get a little lizard here that tries to get in the window. It's especially interested in the cricket when it's on.
Oh. Some people say Australia doesn't exist, you know.
I know that well. Yeah, that's what kookaburras are laughing at. Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. Oh, shut up. You're recording this, aren't you?
Yes.
You could use this as anything.
I think I will. Those people listening to the Easter egg, this is what we go through to get you the Skeptic Zone.